So, what we're going to do is we'll just kind of do a quick review from where we were before of what we talked about on the original one. And in a nutshell, I should mention that basically on my book, I'm talking about the connection between modern physics and the UFO technology. And I believe we actually may be on the threshold of understanding UFO technology. Modern physics has made so many incredible advances, and I believe it's only a matter of time, possibly within 5 to 10 years. So we'll catch up from where we were before. And basically what I had talked about in the original show back in February 10 was we were talking about a problem in physics called the hierarchy problem, which is the weakness of gravity versus the other fundamental forces of nature, which are the strong nuclear force, the weak nuclear force, and electromagnetism. And one of the solutions to, or the primary solution, theoretical solution to that problem is a group of theories that began postulating the existence of extra dimensions. And what we see here on the screen is kind of like the father or of all those theories. And it may explain the weakness of gravity. Gravity is incredibly weak compared to the other forces in nature. Like, for example, electromagnetism is 10 to the 36 power stronger than gravity, and the other non-gravity forces are in that range as well. That's the number 1 followed by 36 zeros. So we can move so what they think here is one of the exciting theories that's coming out, they think that all the subatomic particles that carry the forces of nature as well as represent the matter particles of nature are open strings with the 2 open ends of the string stuck on a space-time membrane, which you see on the left side of the diagram. And they think Eric, that on the right side there is another entire universe parallel to the one we live on. The portion of the diagram on the left, that membrane, actually represents our entire universe. Every star you see in the sky, every planet, everything. And but the interesting thing is, all the subatomic particles representing all the matter and force particles appear to be stuck like open strings. People have probably heard of string theory. Appear to be stuck on the membrane, our space-time membrane, except for one particle, and that's the graviton that carries the gravity force, which appears to be a closed loop. And that means...
That would be the red circles, is that correct?
Exactly, Eric, on the bottom of the screen there. And that means that these particles, the gravitons, are not stuck on the membrane, and that appears to explain why gravity is so weak in our universe. But if this is true, it means we live in more than a 4-dimensional universe. In fact, as you can see from the title of this slide, 11-dimensional, but it appears that only 5 of the 11 dimensions are larger dimensions, so that means that there's one more extra large dimension beyond the 4 of space-time that we once thought we lived in. So a theory came out of this overall overarching theory here that looks like it could finally explain the weakness of gravity. And so we can move to slide 26.
Absolutely.
And this theory is called warp geometry. It was developed by a Harvard physicist and another physicist from Johns Hopkins University. And basically what they're saying is that the brain on the left there, that's the 4-dimensional world we live in, and I'm only going to refer to 5 dimensions from this point on. And
please.
Yep. Okay. And the space, and the space between these membranes, according to their theory, and they believe that the other membrane that's parallel to ours is called the gravity brain, and they believe it is warped in such a way that it attracts 99.9999% of all the gravitons in the universe, in the larger five-dimensional universe here, to the surface of the gravity brain on the right side. And that would exactly explain why gravity is so weak on our membrane. And the second, Eric, that I saw this theory, it occurred to me that maybe if somehow UFOs could get off of our membrane on the left side there and get into the bulk, this five-dimensional bulk, in between the membranes here, then the deeper they go into the membrane, the stronger gravity gets, simply because there's more gravitons deeper in the bulk, the five-dimensional bulk. And I understood immediately when I thought about that, that since general relativity says distances shrink in a strong gravity field, that the deeper you get into that five-dimensional bulk, the shorter the distance between stars. And that is what I think is going on. I believe these UFOs are somehow penetrating the bulk, and that allows them to travel between the stars. And so if we go to the next slide, this illustrates what happens as you get into the five-dimensional bulk. And as you can see, distance shrinks the deeper you get into the bulk. And the next slide will give an idea of how they get off of the membrane. I believe they surround their craft with a type of graviton called a Kaluza-Klein graviton. For short, I show it as KK gravitons on the bottom there, and those are the red circles there. And these type of gravitons are not going to be weak gravitons like we experience on Earth. They are going to have an interaction strength up to 10 to the 16 power stronger than the gravity we experience on Earth. And the interesting thing is that these KK gravitons, which, by the way, we expect to create in the Large Hadron Collider over in Geneva, Switzerland, sometime within the next year or two, we expect to create these, but only if the extra dimensions exist, which I believe they do. And the interesting thing is about these KK gravitons is their natural home is in the bulk. They want to go home, just like E.T. They want to head home. And that means that if a UFO surrounds itself with these KK gravitons, what will happen? What's exciting is we should see that UFO become partially transparent and then totally disappear as the entire UFO, surrounded by these KK gravitons, is pulled into the bulk. It goes into the bulk. And sure enough, many, as I mentioned in the previous episode that we did, I talked about pilot sightings of UFOs that became partially transparent and totally disappeared. So I believe that's an example of we're going to be discovering ourselves in modern physics in the not too distant future. I believe literally within the next couple of years. So I think we are actually seeing physics that we're on the threshold of understanding already being used by these advanced extraterrestrial civilizations. So if we can go to the next slide, please. Okay, and here's an incredible story. Sir Francis Chichester, back in 1931, he was over the Tasman Sea between Australia and Tasmania, and he saw, Eric, a UFO, and if you want to read that, it's very, very interesting. If you want to read that slide.
Please allow me to put on my reading glasses.
Oh, no problem. Yep.
He says, quote, "It came on, but instead of increasing in size, it diminished as it approached. When quite near, it suddenly became its own ghost. 1 second I could see through it, and the next it had vanished.
Thank
Unquote.
you. Thank
Did
you.
you like
Thank
the
you.
theatrical essence I gave to that?
And Eric, that's why I asked you to do it. You're much better than me at it. and so, but
That's why
I,
I love you, Bob. That's why I love you.
and
You lie so good.
no, 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 no. You do it so perfectly, and but I wanted the audience to see that even back in 1931, way before the modern era of UFOs, pilots were seeing these things, and even back then, they were seeing them disappear, become partially transparent, where he says it became its own ghost, and then he could see right through it, and the next it had vanished, and that is incredibly important because it means that this guy who became knighted, Sir Francis Chichester, and is very, very famous in Great Britain. And this is a very credible witness, and he observed one of these things way back then, and we're seeing again the same thing today. So I believe what he saw and what we are seeing today is these UFOs literally moving off of our membrane and going into the bulk. So if we go to the next slide, Eric, that'd be great. Thank you. Um, so here's an example of a UFO going to Alpha Centauri. And the nearest star system to Earth is Alpha Centauri, which is 4.3 light years, about 25 trillion miles. And but as I mentioned, the gravity force in the bulk increases by 10 to the 16 orders of magnitude between the TeV brane, that is the membrane that space-time universe membrane that we live on, and the Planck membrane, also known as the gravity brane, which is parallel to the one we live on, according to these current theories. If we assume that the UFO only goes into the bulk part way, that five-dimensional bulk, where gravity is only 10 to the 12 orders of magnitude stronger than the TeV brane gravity, so in other words, it's only 1/10,000th of its maximum gravity strength in the bulk, the distance to Alpha Centauri shrinks from 25 trillion miles, 4.3 light years, to, if you can go to the next slide, Eric. Thank you.
Da-da-da.
Just 25 miles. And as I mentioned in the previous episode, this means you could literally drive to Alpha Centauri in your car in half an hour, depending on the speed limit in the bulk.
And if there are any highway patrol.
Chips, if there's any, well, they wouldn't be called the California Highway Patrol. They'll be called the Interstellar Highway Patrol, ISP, the ISPs.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
so if we could go to the next slide.
Well, before we do that, I just want to, for anybody that just joined us, it's just tuning in, I wanted to remind everybody we're speaking with Bob Schroeder. He is the author of this awesome book, Solving the UFO Enigma. And this is the book you can get on Amazon. You can get it a lot of places. I think Amazon is probably the easiest and best price. You can get it in an ebook form or buy it in soft cover, I guess, not hardcover.
Yep. Soft cover. Yeah.
Bob does lectures all over the country. We featured one of the pictures of him at just as recently as in late January at the Del Rio conference there in what was it, Texas, yes. And so anyways, I just wanted to remind everybody that tonight we're lucky enough to have back with us Bob Schroeder. Also, if you didn't happen to catch the first part, well, this today's show has turned into accidentally a two-part show, but back on February 10th, we had Bob who laid out about the first 25 slides, and including the last couple of slides that you just saw. So he kind of recapped us on everything. And now we're starting to venture into new territory, which is all the really fun stuff, actually. So
yes, yeah,
all the science, if you're really interested in all the science, make sure you go back watch the February 10th episode. And also, I highly recommend you pick up his book. I think the ebook is like $9 or $10, and I think the printed version is like, I don't know what, $20 or
Um,
something. I mean, it's really
uh,
cheap.
17 or 18.
Yeah,
Amazon changes the price, so I don't have control over that.
yeah,
And
yeah. So it's a super good book. It's well worth it. But anyways, let's go to that next slide that you asked for, which dun da da
okay.
da.
and 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 I just put this in as kind of a neat cartoon. And Bart says he goes to Alpha Centauri in just 30 minutes. Yeah, sure. See, even Homer's a skeptic. So, and, so if we can go to the next one, Eric.
Oh, sorry, wrong one. Here we go.
That's it. And so, on the two big questions on UFO technology, which is how the entire slideshow started back in February 10. So, on the first question of how did they get here? Well, it looks like Mother Nature provides a natural warped pathway. Now, the second big question, and this is new territory now, how are these craft able to perform inertia defying acrobatics in Earth's atmosphere? And we'll look at that next. And this is actually pretty quick. It's a very simple explanation. If we can go to the next slide.
Before we do that, Bob,
Yeah.
I hate to interject, but I did read your book, and I've listened to you talk about this a few times, and I just had kind of an aha moment. Let me pull open this slide again. Sorry to take us
Yes.
back.
Not a problem.
You know what this reminds me of? If I were to able to rotate this, I wonder if I can rotate that. Anyways, if you think of this as the top, this is like the bridge, and this is one mountain's, and it goes down to a valley, and there's a little river down here, and then there's another mountain here, and there's the big steep walls up to the other side. And man
Oh,
came along and built this bridge here, and you could drive across this bridge, or you know what I'm saying?
I
Versus
think.
driving all the way down here, crossing the river, driving all the way back up,
Oh, I see
and
what you're saying. Yes.
yeah. And
Yep,
it
I
just
see what you're
occurred to
saying.
me that these
It's
gravitons and everything that you've been talking about,
yeah,
it basically driving the 25 minutes to the nearest star system. It
yep.
made me think,
And
oh, okay, it's like gravity. It's nature, because you said nature provides a natural warped pathway. Well, that's
exactly.
like us
And
building a natural bridge across two mountains that are, like this, and you got this big valley in between. Well, we just build a bridge across so we can easily drive across the top of the bridge, and we don't have to go all the way down and all the way up through this miserable valley trying to get
exactly.
across.
Yep. And Eric, that's an excellent analogy because that's exactly what's happening. And and I might add one more comment that the exciting thing about this is that if this warp geometry does exist in the five-dimensional bulk, what it means is, one of the exciting things about it is that it means that we don't have to generate the energy needed to warp space-time. Mother Nature does it for us. And that's one of the big obstacles to interstellar travel, generating the enormous energy needed. But it looks like Mother Nature, in solving the hierarchy problem, has also given us a way to go to other star systems. And so anyway, here's the exciting thing about how UFOs are able to defy gravity in our atmosphere. I
Can
think
I
all...
interject one more time?
Oh, absolutely, Eric. Yep. And
Okay, so that sounds really abstract, what you just said. Going to another star system. All
yep.
right.
And
But you know what? If we go back as little as, 600 years, back to the
yeah,
1400s, they were kind of thinking the world was kind of flat, and they were kind of thinking there was no chance of getting around because it was flat and would fall off.
oh, right.
And
And
Columbus said, you know what? I think I can use the gravitons and nature's natural things,
warping.
and
And
boom, go to the other star system. For him, I mean, the U.S., the America's colony, or the America's continent, which they didn't even know existed, out back then might as well have been another star system as far as we're concerned on today's standards. You know
Yep.
that?
That's
And
exactly right. Yep.
he
And
used Mother Nature's bridge, which was the ocean, and he put a little bit of technology, which is 3 boats and a lot of bravery,
yes. Yeah.
and
Oh,
he went for it.
and
And so for people to say, "Oh, that's impossible. Mother Nature would never provide that bridge." Well, we've seen it before. I mean, it only
hmm
six
hmm
hundred years ago in terms of Earth's history, which is about what 4 to 5 billion years. 600
yeah,
years is
hmm
nothing. It's
and
it's like one tick of a second on a clock.
a drop,
It's not even that. It's like a fraction of a tick of a second on a clock.
mhm, a drop in the bucket, and
Absolutely, one grain of sand on the beach. So I'm
yes,
sorry, I keep getting you sidetracked. I'm just so
and
excited about this. Did you need me to go to the next slide? I
no, no,
forgot.
nope. You can stay right there.
Okay.
This is good. And from what you were just talking about there, it got me thinking too. It almost seems like Mother Nature wants us to explore, and it's giving us the tools to do it or the means to make it happen, and
We
that's
just
kind
have
of
to build the
exciting.
boat.
And now the new boat, the next
Yeah.
Nino Pinto and Santa Maria is this UFO in the middle of the photograph or the slide here, and but anyway, to make a long story short, I think we know that the Large Hadron Collider is expected to create KK gravitons.
Yes.
We do actually think they're going to be created if the extra dimensions exist. However, physicists know that if KK gravitons are created, they will in turn induce the creation of micro black holes. And of course, everybody's heard of the controversy in Switzerland, where they were concerned that a micro black hole, the Large Hadron Collider, is located in Switzerland, in Geneva, Switzerland.
Yeah.
They were very concerned. A lot of private citizens, not physicists, but private citizens, that the micro black holes would continue to grow after they created them and swallow Switzerland. and so
That'd be bad. We'd lose Swiss watches, Swiss
it,
chocolate.
exactly,
That'd be horrible.
and Ricola cough drops. I just thought of that,
Oh,
and
wait,
I
are
like.
those from Switzerland or are those from like
Nope, they're
maybe they
Switzerland.
are?
Yep, they are. Yeah,
Ricola.
and they do that. The guy has that yodeling thing he does up in the mountain,
Yeah.
and so anyway, um, if these UFOs are able to create micro black holes, which we expect to create, then it turns out micro black holes will swallow ordinary four-dimensional gravitons, even though those gravitons go at the speed of light. Even photons that carry light waves, even they will be swallowed by the micro black holes underneath the ship. And that may explain, by the way, why when we look at these UFOs, they often, around their edges, seem to be partially transparent, because the UFO is actually not only on the edge of going into the five-dimensional bulk, but in addition, it's swallowing a lot of photons, so it looks like people say the edges of the UFOs often seem to ripple. They seem to be wavy, and that's probably from the photons being swallowed. But the important thing for levitation is the micro black holes swallow gravitons. Now, the gravitons are necessary to tell space how to warp. Gravity is due to the warping of space-time, but it's gravitons that tell space-time how to warp. And so if the UFO can swallow these gravitons, then the graviton exchange between the UFO and the Earth below there no longer, or for the most part, doesn't occur. And so the Earth looks at the UFO, and they can probably reduce a 30-ton UFO down to like 3 or 4 ounces. So they just need a small thruster to keep this massive object levitating above the surface. We can go to the next slide.
Okay, there we go.
And all this slide does, Eric, it just gives the detail of the absorption and emission of a microblack hole, because microblack holes do decay. But the important thing is those blue things that are coming out of the UFO and coming out of the Earth, they're normally exchanged between the UFO and the planet Earth. But what the UFO is doing is it's eliminating those gravitons. So as far as the Earth is concerned, the object that it sees above the Earth, instead of measuring its mass as 30 tons, the Earth sees the object as 3 or 4 ounces, and it says, "Oh, that thing is nothing," and if it wants to float around up there, hey, good for it, but I'm not going to pull it down to planet Earth because it doesn't have the mass that I thought it did, but it really does have that mass. And so we can go to the next slide, and here's where it gets exciting. They always notice how UFOs are able to accelerate at blinding speeds. Well, it turns out, how do the UFOs overcome inertia? Inertia is the resistance to acceleration of a body. Turns out that the equivalence principle of general relativity says inertial mass equals gravitational mass, which we see as weight. Number two, by eliminating or reducing the gravitational mass, that is, by swallowing the gravitons, UFOs eliminate or most likely reduce the inertial mass of the UFO. And that is how, Eric, that's how they're able to accelerate at 20 Gs, 30 Gs, 40 Gs. The best that we can do is about 10 Gs, and only with a pressure suit, a G suit, so the pilot of a jet fighter doesn't black out. And so these UFOs have been clocked at 100 Gs and better. So it's clear that they've overcome inertia, and this is how they do it. And so next slide, please. Okay, and there's some circumstantial evidence. Number one, a UFO observed in Sonora, California in 1976. And number two, a crisis in physics. We can do the next slide. The crisis in physics, I think we missed, I'm not sure. Well, you can go to the next slide.
Well, before I do that, let me just remind anybody that's tuning in right now, I'm talking with Bob Schroeder. He's my guest tonight. He was here on February 10th last month, and we did the first half of this show with him back then, where he laid out a lot of the science. Now tonight we're in the fun part, but this is a picture of Bob's book, Solving the UFO Enigma. You can pick it up on Amazon or any of your favorite online retailers, but Amazon's probably one of the best ways. You can get it in ebook format as well as paperback if you wanted paperback. But I just wanted to remind everybody that that's who you are, and that's what we're talking about. And of course, we're kind of breezing through all this information, but if you want to get the full detail and really get a chance to study it, do yourself a favor. I bought the book a couple of years ago when I first saw Bob at Ruben Uarte's Northern California MUFON meeting, and he Skyped in at that time, and I'm like, oh gosh, I got to get that book, and I'm glad I did. Even though it gets a little nerdy and a little technical, it's still, Bob does a great job of explaining it, just kind of like he's doing tonight. So, and feel free to use tonight's recording as well as February's recording as a kind of a guide to supplement the book. So let me get back here. You said you wanted, did you want this slide or to go to the next one? Next one? Was it the next one?
Wait a minute. Okay, yeah, that's good. It turns out the crisis in physics, there was another theory called supersymmetry, and which we saw on the cover of that Scientific American, and
Yes.
it was supposed to solve the hierarchy problem, but unfortunately, Eric, um, they have not, or after years and years of looking at particle accelerator experiments, they have not found the supersymmetric particles that they should have seen if supersymmetry is a correct theory. And what's exciting is it looks like supersymmetry is failing, and that means that warp geometry, the theory we UFO researchers need to explain how UFOs get to Earth and how they levitate, that
Yeah.
is now looking more likely, because the other solution to the hierarchy problem, this theory of supersymmetry, doesn't look like it works. It doesn't look like it properly explains nature. So that's
Mm.
exciting. And I think can we go to the next slide? Oh no, we want to go backwards. We missed a slide, a very important one. Back one more, and back one more. There we are. The other thing that's really exciting is a UFO sighting in Sonora, California in 1976. They found tritium, which is an isotope of hydrogen, was found in the angel's hair of UFO. And people who have followed the UFO Enigma over the years are aware that oftentimes when UFOs are just above the Earth's surface, they will, from the bottom of the UFO, they will emit or drop this cobweb type substance, which is known as angel's hair. We call it angel's hair, but it turns out that they found in this sample of angel's hair, it's rare in nature. They found tritium in the angel's hair, but tritium is rare in nature, but it is found in particle accelerators, and I believe, just like the Geneva, the Large Hadron Collider in Geneva, Switzerland, is going to be creating these KK gravitons, which in turn create micro black holes. I believe that's exactly what UFOs are doing, and the fact that we're finding a substance that is produced by particle accelerators more or less points to the likelihood that these UFOs are actually particle accelerators. So isn't that interesting? And oops, I think we lost the slideshow.
No, no, we're
Oh, there
back.
we are. There we are. Thank you, Eric. Thank you.
Yeah, I was
And
just letting people see your face.
oh, thank you. I hope they don't have nightmares. and so, so anyway, you can move further ahead here. I think we have. Oh, there we are. Where do we go from here? Okay, that's exactly what we need. Well, let's see. Where we go from here, what we have to do is gather evidence. We need to get better spectrographic evidence from UFOs. And there's a couple of groups that are working on that. I don't know if I mentioned that in the next slide or not. Oh no, I
That's the
didn't.
next
Okay,
slide.
you can leave that one there. That's okay. But the important thing is, for the future, what we need is unfortunately, the equipment is very expensive, but we need gamma ray detectors. We need X-ray detectors. We need visible light detectors, and we need to be able to gather all this. Emissions data from UFOs, close encounter UFO sightings. So, for
Hmm.
example, see this picture taken in Namur, Belgium in 1955. If we had the proper equipment nearby, we could have picked up the emissions coming out of the bottom of this UFO. And if we see something called Hawking radiation, Hawking radiation is a byproduct of black hole decay. And that would indicate the UFOs are using black holes, and that is the exciting thing.
Mm.
So if this is where this, Eric, is really where the rubber hits the road. If we could afford the equipment that we need. And unfortunately, as I mentioned, X-ray detectors, gamma ray detectors, visible light detectors and stuff, all this stuff is rather expensive and would have to have it in the right location where UFOs are being seen. For example, they're often seen around the missile silos up in North Dakota. So why not put a permanent UFO cluster of UFO detectors of spectral, I mean of electromagnetic spectrum detectors up in that area, and that could be extremely useful in getting the data we need. And then if we do see Hawking radiation, then that would virtually confirm that these UFOs are using the technology that we on Earth, here on Earth, are literally right on the threshold of understanding ourselves. And so that's real exciting. So could we go to the next slide? This is an interesting one. It's like a probe UFO. It's much smaller than the jet. It's probably 3 feet in diameter, 2 or 3 feet. But remember during World War II, or the stories coming out of World War II, where pilots from both sides, the belligerents on both sides of the struggle there, reported these so-called Foo Fighters
Mm-hmm.
that they saw, and what they were, I believe, were exactly what we see in the insert here. These are probably small reconnaissance type craft that the parent UFO sends down to kind of examine our military hardware, like these jets here. This is a jet bomber. Not sure what
Right.
that is, but somebody in the audience might know. RB-47? I'm not sure. Whatever it is. So next slide, please. There's a great photo. The dates are mixed up here, but it's of a UFO taken by the French Air Force, a French fighter, and the French fighter. This is a gun camera picture, and it's a typical UFO. It's probably distorted by the lens or something, but it's you can see this interesting protuberance on the top of the UFO. That's probably a sensor of some type, and again, this is a characteristic UFO. Undoubtedly, although it doesn't say it in the picture here, this is probably a disc-shaped UFO seen on edge. And
Yeah.
so yeah, so if we could move to the next slide, this is a cutaway of the Large Hadron Collider. It's 26 miles in circumference. Man, I'll
Wow.
tell you, Eric, this is big science. This is over $10 billion, this machine. And you can see some of the particle detectors. There's 4 of them around the base here.
Hey,
And
wait a
these are,
second.
yes, in
You
a,
said it cost $10 billion?
yes, yep, in a,
You know, I hate to bring this up because it
oh,
is a tad bit political and it's also a tad bit regional
yeah,
to here in Northern California, but we do have a lot of viewers that live in California, especially Northern California. We spent over $20 billion building just half of a bridge, the bridge extension from Oakland to Treasure Island,
oh,
replacing
wow,
the old trestle bridge. And they spent
huh,
over $20 billion for a bridge, which they say, many experts and engineers now say, is probably not as earthquake proof and safe as they had hoped it would be.
oh,
Plus, it
no,
has a bunch of structural engineering problems, including they can't access certain areas for maintenance purposes that are extremely vital to access. And we spent over
huh,
$20 billion for that monstrosity, yet the Europeans in Switzerland and France managed to build a 26-mile Hadron Collider, cutting edge technology, under the surface of the Earth for
yep,
26
and,
miles.
yep,
And the next
and,
few slides, we're going to see how sophisticated this thing is. And they only spent $10 billion, half the
yes,
price
and,
of what we spent on a POS bridge extension that only goes maybe 2 miles between Oakland and Treasure Island. And I will get off my soapbox and go to the next slide.
Oh, but that's very interesting, Eric, because it does show you that uh, potentially building these particle accelerators that we in the United States, we do need to build some of these particle accelerators. But I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a second. Um,
Yeah.
and this is a view inside the tunnel of the Large Hadron Collider, and you get some idea of how big this baby is. And if we can go to the next one. Now, this is a picture of one of the detectors. I think this is called the Atlas. And if you look at the bottom center of the picture, you can see a picture of the work. There's a workman there. And you see, you went too quick.
Oh, I did?
But
I
yeah,
can't see the work. Are there
yeah.
workmen in there?
There's one guy at the bottom. Yeah,
Right
you got
there.
him.
Huh. I'm
Exactly.
circling them.
Yeah. And now I have to tell you an interesting story real quick here. It turned out that they had a major problem with the Large Hadron Collider, Eric. The thing actually had an explosion in one of its cryogenic electromagnets, and as a result, it shut down this entire $10 billion machine for a year and a half while they fixed it. So the security for the Large Hadron Collider spent quite a bit of time trying to locate the whoever was responsible, but they didn't know whether it was sabotage or negligence. But in any case, the security teams had to find out the guilty culprits who were responsible. They found bubblegum stuck in the sensitive electronic equipment. And now, for the first time, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to see the culprits responsible in the next slide for this causing the breakdown of the Large Hadron Collider. There they are. And you see the little guy in the middle in the front with the orange shirt and the two thumbs up. They
Uh-huh.
believe he is the ringleader.
Of course. Hey, real quickly, let me just, because we only got like 2 slides left, but I would just want to remind everybody, real quickly, especially those that may have just tuned in here last few minutes. Bob Schroeder is our guest tonight. He is just wrapping up the 2-part series regarding his book, Solving the UFO Enigma. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it in ebook form for your Kindle. It's going to cost you like around $10 for the digital version, or you can get the printed version, which is going to cost you around $19 or whatever, and have it shipped to your house. But everything we covered tonight, and also on February 10th, he goes into much greater detail. He makes it very easy for you to understand, and there's a lot more content. We just touched the surface, so you're not seeing the full stories. If you're really interested in this, get Bob's book. Search him on Amazon under Robert L. Schroeder, or Solving the UFO Enigma, Robert L. Schroeder. Pick up his book, and that way you can get the full story. And with that, let me get to the next slide for you.
Oh, these are just the credits, but I do have to show that legally.
Absolutely.
And
Well, it's
yeah,
people that
and
work hard, and it's always important to make sure that Teddy Bear is properly credited.
yep,
And
yeah. Thank you, Eric, for that one.
how
And
about this
this
character here?
now, I want everybody in California to appreciate your nice weather out there. This is what it's like in the northeast of the U.S. So you can see my fondest of wishes on the bottom: California or bust.
Well,
I mean,
luckily, rumor has it your daughter's going to be out here for some important business this month here in our fair city of San Francisco.
she sure is. My
Yeah.
daughter Debbie is a
Well, we don't
structural.
want to give away any confidential things, do we?
That's just her first name. Oh well, it got
Oh,
the
okay,
last
that's
name too.
true.
Yeah, it got her last name too. But that's okay. She's a structural engineer, and she's
Uh-huh.
heading out to San Francisco for a couple of days. Yep, And
Is this
and
slide supposed to be here? That doesn't look as fun as this one.
this is more fun.
Yes.
and so anyway, can you get an idea of how much snow we get around here? in
Yes.
the in that slide. And this is just a interesting slide that shows energy and length scales of physics theories, and it shows the important scales where different things occur. Where there's symmetry breaking. In physics, symmetry is very, very important, and the electroweak symmetry breaks into the weak force and electromagnetism at this what they call the weak scale. Um, and then the Guth symmetry, the grand unified theory, symmetry breaks into the strong force and the electroweak force at what is called the Guth scale. That's 10 to the 15 giga electron volts. And then the theory of everything, the TOE, the big toe, breaks breaks into gravity and the grand unified theory up around the scale of 10 to the 21st giga electron volts. And so that's just of interest for people if they want to get an idea of the different scales in physics, in modern physics, that we're exploring. We expect, by the way, to get up there to potentially the Planck scale. That looks like it's potentially possible. So in particle accelerators. So yeah. So Eric, I
Hey,
hope.
thanks a lot. I
Yeah.
know it's
Thank.
late back there on the East Coast. I know you're 3 hours ahead of us, so I know you're drawing to 15 past 10.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And
we kept it our goal to try and finish early. If we didn't have that little snafu where the video cut out on us, we probably may have wrapped by 7. So thank you for sticking around, and I'm going to wrap up the show here real quick. And if you want to hang out, you can for a minute, or if you want to just head on out, you're welcome to do so and go get some sleep. But Bob,
yeah,
again, thanks a lot.
I just want to say one thing. Thank you for having me on the show again.
Oh, you're most welcome, and please, hopefully, people will be picking up your book on Amazon and making comments about it and giving you good positive reviews. And if you do that, please make sure you mention that you learned about it here on the Cosmic Cafe Show. I know Bob will be very appreciative of it, and I would certainly appreciate you letting Bob know that's where you found us. And with that, let me go ahead and wrap up tonight's show. Thank you for hanging through our little snafu that we had at the opening there. I was like, what happened? The thing just crashed on me. So thanks for hanging out there. By the way, all the stories we talked about earlier today for the show, if you like them, you can find them on Twitter. Those are all on the Twitter hashtag CCS Live. I will warn you, there is some sort of a cooking thing going on using the same hashtag CCS Live. So if you happen to search it and not seeing our stories at the top of your search, just dig down a little bit down the page, because they're tweeting about a bunch of stuff at their little conference that they're having. And so don't get confused. It's all there. I've been doing it since October, so they just, I don't know, they just started using it or whatever. But just want to make sure I mention that. Also, if you like the show and you happen to be on our website, if you wanted to donate something, feel free to hit that old donate button. Use PayPal. You're more than welcome to help us out with that. And if you're looking for us on your favorite social media, of course, we mostly hang out on Twitter, and we also like Facebook a lot. And of course, there's the others like Google Plus, Instagram, and of course, most importantly, where we broadcast right here on YouTube. And right below me, if you're watching us on the YouTube channel, if you're on CosmicCafeShow.com/live, you're not going to see the subscribe button, but click on the link to take you over to YouTube. Please subscribe, join the 500 plus other subscribers to the show, and we would really appreciate that. It'll also keep you updated when we post new episodes every single day. With all that, thanks so much. Have a great evening. We'll see you back here tomorrow night with Russ, Emmanuel, and Eric. What was Ant? I just drew a blank on his last name. It's Eric A. Eric Cast, but what's his last name? Oh gosh, I want to say Eric Anders, but no, Eric Alexander. There we go. There we go. I'm not totally off the house. All right, we're gonna see you guys here tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, and again we will have Russ Emanuel and Eric Alexander with movie Occupants and the new comic book spin-off. So with that said, see you later, my friends. Good night.
Hi, Eric.
Hold on a second, Bob.
Okay.